All right, we are on air. Today is Thursday, April 25th, and this meeting is to check in on our active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. Before we get into the things we've been working on, I did want to mention that the PMC voted on an issue to make configuration storage swappable. So what that means is that right now, the only place you can store your configuration files is in the file system, and all of your values will be read off of disk when they're needed and written to disk when they're created. And we wanted to add an API so that that was not the only option. It would allow us to create a new config storage class that could, for example, save your configuration values into the database instead of into the file system. So this isn't something that is going to affect anyone who's using Backdrop as it is now. It'll continue to work the way it's always worked, but it would allow people that have more complicated infrastructure to be able to work with Backdrop on it. So it's one of those things that isn't necessarily an 80% use case, but it also has a pretty big impact on whether Backdrop might be suitable for particular applications. For example, higher education is one of the people that presented interest in this in the first place, and we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a limiting factor. So that's where that landed. I have added a comment in the issue where we were discussing that, which is issue number 2277, saying that work can proceed there because the PMC gave it a thumbs up. There's some clarification on some technical details that we need to work out. So there's a new issue for the PMC to discuss that. But we did at least reach a decision that yes, it should be possible for you to store configuration wherever you want. All right, next up on our list is backdropcms.org. We are working on improvements to the modules, themes, and layouts pages. Last week, I rebased the previous branch we had for that so that it includes the latest security update to Backdrop. And I did a little bit of work on trying to get the modules, themes, and layouts pages to list not only modules, themes, and layouts, but also any placeholder projects. So for example, if you searched for link module, it would tell you, hey, you don't need link module for Backdrop. Those pages also now include instructions on if you're upgrading from 777, here's what you should do for the upgrade process if you're using link module. So hopefully we'll be able to get that rolled out soon. Homepage demo button. Nate, do you want to give us an update on that?
Sure. So the status listed in the agenda is button is back and fixed-ish. So if you visit backdropcms.org/demo/create, there's a button there that lets you spin up a sandbox or a Backdrop demo just by clicking the button. And per a lot of testing that has just happened from Gitter, it's intermittent whether or not it succeeds in creating a sandbox. So we fixed it so that it works most of the time, or maybe even just some of the time. But it seems to be a little inconsistent still.
It fails better.
What's that?
It fails better.
And it fails better. At least it gives you a message now instead of just hanging there.
It gives you a message saying, try again. And then when you try again, it works.
Might work. Yeah. Yeah. Gregor is also asking that the sandbox looks like it's out of date. It's currently running 1.12.1. It should be running 1.12.6. We're still a little bit new to figuring all this out. That seems to be the problem. I pushed up 1.12.6 to Tugboat, so it should actually be using the latest repository or the latest version because the Git repository is all up to date. But for some reason, the new sandboxes aren't using that new version quite yet. So it's supposed to pull it in and rebuild it automatically nightly, but it seems like it's not actually doing that. So this one might actually be an issue with Tugboat or an issue with our configuration. I'll have to investigate a little further on that. So still not quite ready for prime time, but we have resolved the it not working ever problem, which at least is a step forward.
You don't think it's good enough to get deployed as it is?
I don't. Well,
the only problem currently is if we update the version, it should be okay. I guess I can't tell if the problem there's an issue with installing modules, contrib, and so people won't be able to test anything but core. And I'm not sure if this is a problem with Tugboat or with 1.12.1, because I thought from memory there was an issue with that release. So if we update it, I will be able to test if you can install contrib. And if that works, then it's good.
So Nate, can you also write up some instructions on how to keep Tugboat up to date? I know in the every time we have a release of Backdrop, there's a little to-do there that's like, Nate, update Tugboat, and you always do it, but we don't know how that's happening. So it'd be good to have that documented about, do you have to update the Tugboat repository and then also something in the Backdrop CMS codebase that pulls the right version, or like what is the process for that? Would be good for us to know so that we can delegate that as necessary.
Yep, agreed. I love delegation.
If we document, we can delegate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we're still. I think I've been hesitating on that because it's still not like totally working yet. So, but yes.
There are two issues here we talked about in the last meeting as well, which was our usability meeting, about upgrading instructions for how to get from Drupal to Backdrop. And this is particularly relevant now that we have a huge box on our homepage telling everyone they can do it. But we have a documentation page that's fairly detailed that tells you how to get from Drupal to Backdrop. But as people are using it, they are identifying flaws in the documentation as well as potential issues with the upgrade process itself. So there's just an ongoing issue here to make sure that we stay on top of issues people run into and making sure we document the adequate solution for them in the page on backdropcms.org. So if you guys are doing an upgrade anytime soon, please refer to that page and make sure that everything we're telling you to do is accurate and helps and sort of hurts you. The next issue is 527. This is about documenting the upgrade paths for all of the 60 plus modules that are now in Backdrop Core. There is a corresponding issue I'll add later on into the lower part of this meeting about actually integrating all of the upgrade paths for all of those modules into Core, because some of the modules we didn't know about. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to take this particular module called Layout Preview and put it in Core. It was like, oh, we need to fix layouts. And then later on, we're like, oh, hey, there's a module that does that. And so what we're going to need to do is figure out if there are any settings in the contrib module that map to Backdrop's way of doing it, or if you just say uninstall the module, we're going to do it differently in Backdrop. So documenting each of those steps for each of those modules is important too. So there's a meta issue here that's just to review all of those 60 modules and see which ones need upgrade paths, which ones have them already, which ones don't. And then if we've determined they do need an upgrade path, then there will be an individual issue for like make sure admin module has an upgrade path in Backdrop Core. And then if only some of those values are in Backdrop, we need to explicitly say like your sticky status will be migrated, but your other options may not. So people know what they're going to be getting and what they're going to be using, and there's no surprise. All right, those are the only pressing issues for Backdrop CMS.org, mostly related to documentation. The forum site, now on new PHP 7.2 server, and includes emoji support. So if you really want to put an emoji in your forum comment, totally can. Great. The same is true for our translation site, which is running Drupal 7. So that one we need to keep a little bit of an eye on. There are a bunch of Drupal 7 contrib issues that don't work real well on PHP 7. So if anyone's working on the translation site and you come across a problem that we have not yet seen and resolved, let us know. We can file an issue against the Drupal project. We can patch our site, whatever we need to do. But to just want to throw that out there because that is likely to have problems, for all of our Backdrop sites are likely to not have problems. So yay for keeping an eye out for problems. All right, that is it for our websites. I want to turn it over to Nate to talk about Backdrop CMS itself.
Okay. So let's see, we're currently on version 1.12.6 of Backdrop, which means the next bug fix version will be 1.12.7. We don't have any timeline for 1.12.7, but with the big batch of fixes that went out in 1.12.6, as well as the jQuery security fix. 1.12.7 at this point probably is going to be synchronized with the 1.13 release, as long as there's not another security release that comes out between now and then. So 1.12.7 is probably going to be kind of our tidy things up in the 1.12 version. And of course, everything gets put into 1.13 at the same time. So the things that we've got outstanding for the next bug fix release include one more RTL issue. The CK editor icons, we're finally closing in on fixing the interface for configuring CK editor in issue 3504 when using a right-to-left language. That issue currently needs review. Jen merged the pull request into her pull request, and so now it just needs some eyeballs. Supporting multiple equivalent security releases. Honestly, this probably won't be in 1.12 at all, issue 3524, because we don't even have a start on implementation yet. I think we just want to keep highlighting it during these weekly meetings to say, we really need to get this figured out with 1.13 around the corner, and then we're going to be supporting 1.12 and 1.13 for security fixes for another release. That will make it so that we'll probably hit this problem again and again, that we're maintaining 2 branches at a time for security fixes, but whenever the security fix comes out, if you're running the older version of Backdrop, it will continue, update module will continue to tell you that your site is insecure when you're actually fine. And so, yeah, we have a plan kind of outlined in 3524, but there's no code behind it at this point. Let's see, 2 issues that we've brought up previously. Actually, maybe not 2 issues. There's an issue with PO files if you this is really silly. But if you use the localized website, localized.backdropcms.org, to download a translation file, you currently have to rename the translation file, stupidly, to Drupal instead of leaving it as its file download name for the installer to pick it up. And so this issue 3674 makes it so that you don't have to rename your PO files after you download them from the localization website. And also 3560, very similar problem, that the link during the installer, it says learn how to install Backdrop in other languages, currently links to Drupal's install Drupal in other languages documentation page, which we had left in place because we didn't have the localization server. But now that we not only have the localization server, but we have translated versions of Backdrop available there, we can link over to a new documentation page that has been created that covers how to download and use a localization file from backdropcms.org. So both of those, actually that second one has been merged, and the PO file fix is RTBC. Let's see, Jen, do you want to cover this last one?
Sure. So this is the paired issue with documenting the upgrade process from any contrib module that got merged into core. This is to add upgrade paths for modules integrated into core. So if we find something that doesn't include an upgrade path that should, we should write the upgrade path and put it in. So this is something like panels, for example. If you have a bunch of Drupal 7 sites running panels and you want to get those into Backdrop, we have an upgrade path from the core system blocks in Drupal 7 into layouts in Backdrop, but we don't have an upgrade path from your panels in Drupal 7 into Backdrop. So this could be really tricky because the layouts are a little different, and if you had 100 layouts and panels, you'll need to have all 100 of those layouts in Backdrop. But for the most common use cases of having 1 or 2 layouts and having those 1 or 2 layouts available in Backdrop, it is possible to map which blocks go into which regions, map the visibility conditions, match the paths, and get those moved over. So I'm not sure that's a good example because it's probably the hardest one we've got on our plate. But I think it would be really great if you could tell people, hey, you don't have to rebuild all your panels and move the backdrop because we'll try and get them close for you. There are some much simpler things that need upgrade paths, just like, I don't know, getting variables from a contact form block moved over to our new contact block that's in Backdrop. So we just have to kind of go through each of these contrib projects and say, like, did they have any settings in Drupal 7? If they did, do those same settings exist in Backdrop? If they do, is there an upgrade path? If there's not, write one. So.
Yep. So there's simple modules like admin menu. Yeah, we currently instruct people to uninstall these modules. I think that the optimal thing, if it's supported, would be to just disable them and not uninstall them, so we can keep the settings in the database and then pull them across.
Well, I think that's true if there are settings that Backdrop uses. But if there are settings that Backdrop will never use, if we uninstall but do not disable the module, then those settings will never get removed from your site, which I think is maybe less of a problem, like having extra clutter, than not having what you need. But I think we will know which use case is which, and we can tell people, like, uninstall layout preview or live preview module, but leave admin menu disabled. And so I think we can document that for all of these specific cases. All right, Nate, do you want to take over the 113 list?
Yep, sure. All right, 113, man, it is right around the corner. We now have less than a week before Feature Freeze, which will be May 1st, Wednesday, basically next week. And before that time, we need to button up these remaining, or these feature items. And then I think we've suggested this in releases past that we would like to have a preview version at the code freeze date that includes all of the functionality that will be coming out May 1st or May 15th. I think that's a great idea, and we'll try to make that happen this time around. Items that we've got slated here, adding back field formatters is issue 1376, currently needs review. Let's see, it needs code review and needs testing, but it does have tests itself. So looks like that one just needs some more looking at mostly the code implementation. Dashboard, issue 495. Currently, I think everybody's kind of happy with the functionality as it's been implemented, but it doesn't have any tests to back it up. So the big holdup on Dashboard is testing functionality, or testing the functionality. Do you have anything you want to add, Jen, on Dashboard? I know you've been spearheading or participating a lot in that issue.
No, I think it just needs automated tests written. Everything else should be good.
Okay. Adding translatable strings to core config files. This makes it so that strings can be pulled out of config files as needing to be translated. And so ultimately the localization server will be able to identify those strings and translate them for core and contrib modules. That's issue 3455. This one is actually only a starting point where it does the initial work for some system-wide settings, and I think the emails that are sent out. Olaf has given that a review. Thank you very much, and has tagged it works for me. So little short of RTBC, but still, like, yeah, very much appreciate the review. As a off-topic thing, the works for me tag is proven to be popular. lots of PR works for me tags.
I think it was expected. There were a lot.
I
think.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that, Gregory?
Yeah, I think that this was expected because there were a lot of people that could not do code review or were not confident with that. But and they mentioned it multiple times in the queues that I'm reluctant to mark this RTBC because it works, like the sandbox works, but my code skills are not enough. So I was actually expecting that to happen.
I also think there are people who are capable of doing code review, but just aren't confident at saying that something's ready to be committed. But if you say works for me, it's a much easier barrier to get people to be like, okay, I think it's good, without being like, it's good, it needs to go in. And so I think that there's something in terms of like the psychology of the people. If we want to get them involved, we want to give them an easier label to get them more comfortable labeling things. So I really like it.
Well, yep, case in point there on 3455 that it's RTBC according to Olaf, but yeah, so it's tagged works for me. So yeah, that seems to be successful, that new tag. And lastly, one more issue. This is not going to be done by 113 almost certainly, but package signing, issue 1992, which would make it so that backdropcms.org can sign packages that are created to guarantee that they were not tampered with or modified in any way, has been moving forward still. Like, we made some merges into project module, which is a good first step. So we're getting backdropcms.org kind of primed to be capable of doing the signing, but still more review is necessary to actually look at the part that actually confirms the signatures that would go into core itself. So yeah, still in progress there. Yeah, and anybody that has time to take a look at that, more help would definitely be appreciated, kind of reviewing all of the functionality there. That's it. So 113 looks like overall it'll be pretty modest as far as functionality goes. I think dashboard is going to be a big thing. Oh, we have had some additional like conveniences for in the API that has been added. Let's see, what else have we got here? Some minor UX improvements, changing the way theme debug can be turned on. Extend translation module to include a block that can null translated content. Oh, yeah, that's kind of neat. So like blocks that you place, you can, if you place the existing content block, it can now pull in translated versions of that piece of content automatically instead of placing 6 different blocks that are all just the different languages. So yeah, it's going to be pretty modest, I think, overall. But not every release is like a huge one. So yeah, that's all I've got for 113 status update.
If we are going to the next section, which is discussing general discussion, I know that you mentioned that there might be a pre-release. Is that expected to be done after feature freeze?
Yes. So the objective that we've had with previous preview releases is that we cut them the day of or immediately the day after code freeze. So May 1st would be our objective for making the preview version.
Okay, and how does that work? Like, are we to include those features that are RTBC for 113, except, for example, the dashboard? And then we want them to work towards a stable release?
So everything has to be merged in before May 1st, the features, including dashboard.
Make it so that anyone who wants to help test 113 has like an easy download tarball that they can grab and run. But hopefully that'll also enable us to find like little bugs with all the new stuff we've introduced. And those changes will get in between the 1st and the 15th if we can fix them.
Yeah, so just to get an idea how this will work in the future as well. So using the dashboard as an example, if the dashboard does not get RTBC status, it won't be included.
That's
in
correct.
The pre-release.
It also won't be included in 113.
Yep. Yeah, if dashboard isn't done by May 1st, then it won't be in either. There shouldn't be any features in 113 that are not in the preview.
Yeah.
So the preview would have all of the functionality in it.
Exactly.
Okay. What happens to tasks? For example, we said that with each release we will be including updating the CK editor or jQuery, which was done. But CK editor had a few bug releases, like 3 of them, very small things, very tiny things. Do we still want to include the update for that with the pre-release?
Yeah, every issue should be tagged with which version it's going into, and anything that's tagged with 1.13 and is committed by the first will be in the pre-release. If the issue is tagged like 1.12.7, it'll probably also be in that pre-release. But if the issue gets tagged like 1.13.1, it won't be in the pre-release, it won't be in 13, it'll come out in the first bug fix release of 13.
Okay, because what I have been doing, and the reason why I'm asking this is I monitor the updates for CK Editor, and over the past 4 months there were these small 3 until I guess now, so that we don't have multiple commits for these smaller fixes. So I guess over the weekend would be a good chance to get a pull request for that, because it's an ongoing issue. I mean, we have a ticket which is ongoing, it's permanent.
I think it'll be up to core maintainers too. Like, if all of the updates to all the latest versions of CK Editor are super trivial, that could be a bug fix that gets in between the preview release and the actual fix. But if there's anything in there that could potentially break contrib, that might get like bumped to like 1.14 or something. So yeah, but I don't think that'll happen. But it'll be good to actually see the code before.
Exactly. So the idea was that if we do have pre-releases, we will be including those fixes just to have more sort of like testing exposure.
Yeah.
So I'll try to get pull request filed. It's very trivial changes, actually, those 3.
Great.
I think one of them is language support. The other one was a fix in the change log, and then another very minor things.
Okay. I think that's it then.
Yep.
Yep.
What do we want to do? Do we want to plan a schedule for the first and say like everything needs to be in by X time? Or no plan, just see if it gets in before then it's in, and if it's not, we definitely need a cutoff time. Like nothing will ever get in after midnight Pacific, but that's really late. Ideally, it would get done before that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, in the past, it's really been just kind of as much as we can do.
How about midnight East Coast time? That way, it's still manageable here.
That sounds fine. 9 p.m. Pacific.
9 p.m. we call it.
Midnight East Coast. That sounds
midnight
fine.
East Coast time. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, although there's no guarantee that working on stuff right and up until that point it'll get in. It's all just
try though.
Yeah, but you can try. Exactly.
I know that this is going to be the first sort of like feature freeze that we have a pre-release as well, like a release candidate. But previously we were sort of like lenient when it came to weekends or public holidays. So if it was the feature freeze was to happen over a weekend, we would sort of like give it the whole weekend and do it the next Monday, I think.
Yeah.
The first Monday. Yeah, we're still doing that.
Yeah, we are still doing it. It happens. This is a Wednesday, and it's not a holiday, so it's as far from a weekend as possible.
Okay, cool.
Nice try, though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and wrap this meeting, and then get to work and see how much we can get done by next Tuesday at midnight East Coast time.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you guys on the internet.